these monologue format podcasts because I had stopped doing therapy, and the therapy that I was going to was dialectical behavioral therapy. Fancy name for just regular talk therapy. You talk to a guy, and it was over the phone. And, it was always too much money for what it actually was, which was, he did fine. He was what I needed at the time, but he wasn't like, he was more just this sort of neutral party, and he wasn't even in front of me. He was a voice over the phone as well. I mean, he was, not to denigrate him, he definitely helped me out, so he was there when I needed him, especially when I was really suicidal. He was the exact type of guy I needed, which was a guy who was saying, you're not such a piece of shit, right? It seems like you're working through your problems. You're a type of person. You're not so bad, And that was sort of the main thing that was driving my self-hatred, which was this feeling that because I had not achieved certain benchmarks in life, or because I wasn't, good. There's just something about me that was bad, that was lazy or selfish or terrible or incapable of improvement in any way because I was lazy and selfish and terrible. And then, of course that's not true. We want to be misanthropic, but only very few people are like truly incapable of self-improvement, I think. In my life, I think, you tend to pay attention to the ones who are like really messed up, but I think most people I've met are conscientious or interested in trying to get better in some way, whether it's even in a shallow way, like trying to make a lot of money, or whether it's in a more substantial way, like trying to improve their emotional state of mind. But I just this feeling, this pervasive feeling that there was nothing particularly good about me, and I think you shouldn't let this feeling get too pervasive. But I think the ultimate reckoning with it is that it was true to some degree. I'm not a bad person. I don't do anything particularly evil. I've never committed a crime except for, the small ones, jaywalking, smoking pot when it was illegal. Nothing that anyone would be too mad at me for. Maybe the smoking pot ones some weirdos would, but either way, man, who are the anti-jaywalking people? There must be anti-jaywalking people. There's some dedicated group of anti-jaywalking people. But that's how they feel good. I think it is. Maybe I'm projecting here. So I won't say most people, but I say if you're anything like me, you are concerned with the idea of being good. Or you are concerned, maybe not a hero, but the idea that there is some sort of moral scales, and that simply being neutral is not really good enough on these moral scales. You need to tip the balance in favor of some net positive to the world, which is, a fucked up task, right? Because you don't really know the extent of your actions. I mean, that's always the fear, right? You try and do something good, and then, due to unforeseen consequences, you end up supporting something terrible. Or I think an example of that, or recently, where sort of I wanted to support something, or I did morally support something, but it ended up being the worst possible version of it, was the medically assisted dying in Canada. So I think a lot of people agree that you have a basic right to control your own body. Some people disagree with this. I believe in this fundamental axiom. There is nothing more important than control of your own meat, right? Which is why prison is such a horrific punishment, or even why the draft is such a huge imposition into one's rights, because it means that your body is no longer your own. It is for use by the state. So, which is why all of those issues are morally fraught. I mean, sometimes you need a draft. I think you needed a draft for World War, but I wouldn't want to be in it. Vietnam was a little much. I think we can all agree the draft for Vietnam was a little much. But World War II, maybe you needed it. Maybe I would have deserted. Who knows? I like to think I'm a good person. I like to think I'd be like I'd be that like plucky, funny little Jewish guy in the platoon that gets shot immediately. That's how I always pictured my World War II journey. Hey, old Goldstein's, he's making cartoons in the background. Man, when I get back to Brooklyn, I'm gonna be a cartoonist. I'm gonna do my cartoons for my dames. I'm gonna be the best. I'm gonna be a Will Eisner. I'm gonna be like Captain America. I'm gonna be like riddled with bullets. that would be me. In another life, maybe I was reliving. I was reincarnated as Arnie Goldstein, the cartoonist from Brooklyn who was shot in World War II. That's a new character. That's a new character for everybody. But yeah, I am. The basic idea is that bodily autonomy. If you have some sort of, I think if you believe in the axiom of bodily autonomy, chances are you have some sort of tack towards left-wing values, or I don't know really, because sometimes like libertarian values can like pay lip service to bodily autonomy, even though I don't think they do really. But yeah, so that's what it's all about. So from that, we understand that medically assisted dying, right? Medically assisted dying. I was in support of that because it flows from a general axiomatic view of bodily autonomy. Obviously, I wanted it regulated. I didn't want anyone can kill themselves at any time. Of course, that's ludicrous. You know, what if you just have depression? You know, you shouldn't have the means to have the state kill you if you have something that is treatable. But of course, in the cases of untreatable terminal illnesses where it's not looking good for you and you're just looking down the barrel of months of pain, you know, of course, assisted dying, right? Of course, for terminal illnesses, you want assist. I would want that. I wouldn't want to be like if cancer was, you know, coming for me, it's like stage 4, it's really aggressive. You know, do I want to go through the chemo, or, you know, do I just want to, you know, get out of there now? I mean, I guess there's a chance for a cure, but I think about my own options with that, and yeah, I would tack towards the medically assisted dying every time, and other countries have it, but Canada got it as well, and I was like, okay, good. Now people with terminal illnesses will have their due, and they won't have to do needlessly prolonged suffering, right? And then it got used for the other thing. Yeah, people with treatable illnesses started applying or having it in the worst case scenarios, suggested to them. It's like, so you have such major depressive disorder that you can't hold down a job. Have you considered the government killing you? And yeah, that's put a whole damper on the thing, on my belief, on my strong belief. Of course, you have terminal illness stemming from the inherent axiomatic value of bodily autonomy. You get to kill yourself, of course, and then it gets used for the worst thing imaginable, with all the detractors against it, with all the fucking Christians said against it. You know, all of their fears that it would just be a way to kill the least productive members of the least quote unquote unproductive members of our society. They were proven correct, and just sort of is being used as a subtle way to do eugenics again. So that's terrible. And so that's what I mean, is how do you be good, right? That's just one example. But that was a really egregious one to me because it was something I really believed in, something that I would want for myself, something that corresponds to a very strong axiomatic belief that I have. And to see it come into practice and then get used for the worst immediate not immediately, it wasn't immediate, it was a long time in practice before they started doing like the maid for everybody. But yeah, I mean, I don't know for everybody. If like you have incredible chronic pain or something, I'm sure that it's not just terminal illnesses, I should say. If you have like one of those like incredible pain diseases, but it should be used sparingly, of course. You shouldn't. Yeah, there should be some steps before the state gets to kill you. You get to be voluntarily killed by the state. There should be steps. Is all I'm saying. But I think there are some things we know we can be on the right side of history on. Or I hope that we can be. Or you just have to, if you're supporting it at the time, I don't think you can be concerned with things down the line, especially when things are so immediately and evidently bad. Of course, I am still referring to the situation in Gaza. The Israeli army has killed 10,000 people, thousands and thousands of children. They have rained white phosphorus down on them. They're trying to do Nakba too. It looks as if there are heavy migrations out of Gaza City already, so it's dire. I saw a lot of support. I saw a lot of protests. I saw a lot of really impressive people doing like illegal shit, but like cool illegal shit, like that blockade. Of the weapons barge. It wasn't a barge, it was a boat, but I like to imagine it was just a big barge out of Tacoma. And see, that's the activism. When you think of like the struggle to be good, or like what is the right thing to do, or how can you as yourself just do something, it's type of stuff like that, where you actually putting your body in between where something has to go. You disrupt the necessary commerce, the flow and transport of goods. That's the thing that actually gets people moving on stuff. The problem is that it's illegal, so you have to take on the risk of getting arrested, which I'm not willing to do I'll straight up admit that. Yeah, I'm not willing to do that stuff not because I think it's wrong, because I'm scared for myself, because I do have a selfish instinct. I think a lot of people that do that sort of thing, either they have access to organizations with legal funds and they organize. I'm not a part of these organizations, but Godspeed to them. Or people that do have a strong, I will fully admit, do have a stronger sense of moral right and wrong than I do, and thus are motivated to do actions that may be personally detrimental to themselves, but maybe will have some sort of practical effect. Whereas the thing that I do is, I didn't even go to any fucking protests. That's how much of an asshole I am. My excuse is my dog had this is actually true. My dog had his leg broken and I needed to be with him so he didn't fucking break it again while he was recovering, or he gets his wound infected or anything like that. But I still could have made more time. I'm going to one tomorrow. If that's what I'm doing to mitigate. I don't know if it's anything. It's 2 hours of my time. It's nothing. Maybe I'll talk to people. Maybe I'll get more organized, get involved. But I think there are other things holding me back. Primarily, it's just a difficulty part being in crowds. But this is the type of thing you need to be in crowds for. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if protests. I mean, they do work to some degree. But you can talk about protests that changed the world or did something, and there are many historical examples of that. That Vincent Bevins fella I heard on Chapo, the fellow that wrote the Jakarta Method, he wrote a book about protests that had a material effect on the political landscape around them. So he was talking about that on one of their episodes. So it's not that it can't work, it's just that there are certain conditions needed for it to work that, I think chief of which is media coverage, which, of course, you want the Western media, you want all sets of media to pay attention to you, as we're seeing with like unprecedented levels of support for Palestine out in London, out in every city. You want the media coverage of that, but they don't do it because the American media, and this is not conspiratorial, America is allied with Israel, and CNN and MSNBC, all of them, no matter their political bias, tend to reproduce state lines on stuff. And the state line is we are allied with Israel. Sometimes, occasionally, they'll allow on like a tiny bit of, but the message is overwhelmingly clear. The bias of the American news is towards supporting Israel throughout all of this. That's so they're going to ignore all those protests, or they have less incentive to give them as much coverage as they do things that are less favorable to that cause. They sort of will focus on the stories of the Israelis killed, but not the many, many, many significantly more Palestinians killed, because that is always the case. Because we're allied with them, of course. You can't do propaganda for the other side when you're allied with the one. That's crazy. So you gotta go to other news sources other than mainstream ones, and there's a lot of good ones out there. I mean, I talked about it a couple episodes ago. How do you suss out which ones are good? And at some point, you just have to use intuition. Who sounds smart to you? I mean, that's stupid. Like, that's a really stupid way of divining stuff, but it's actually like one of the most necessary skills you need to develop is like figuring out who sounds smart. Because if you are not as smart as them, or you're sort of like me, you're somewhere near average to maybe mildly above average intelligence, maybe mildly below average intelligence, I don't fucking know, but as a result, I know where I'm situated on the whole smartness spectrum. So I need to figure out who is smart. Who is actually smart. And not only who is smart, but who is not using their smartness to get one over on me. And how do you do that? There's signs, I guess. But it's, to me, the reason why I was always attracted to leftists or left-wing speakers, or eventually became more onto what they were saying, is because they always seemed to have answers that were more rooted in fact than a lot of right-wing commentators. I found a lot of right-wing commentators sort of tended to spin out a fantastical world, or it seemed like they relied a lot more on the emotional quality. Like it was a workup. It was something that was intended to flatter me, or give me some sort of anger that would give me cause to want to be nationalistic and to want to protect the interests of my team. There's sort of I always found the right-wing commentary, even though it claimed to have a greater purchase on rationality, to appeal to a certain base catastrophizing fear of the chaotic liberal world where there are no rules, or there's some sort of like queer cyberpunk nightmare or something like that. And I guess when you're gay, you know, or when you're bisexual, like I am bisexual, who cares? But when you're some sort of queer and you've never found purchase in the mainstream, some part of you wants to, you know, go back to it. It wants to find solace within being normal or corresponding to the tropes of normalcy within, you know, that's where you get homonormativity. That's where you get gay couples trying as hard as they can to replicate the hallmarks of success of straight couples, of, you know, raising children and having a house and being active in the not that there's anything wrong with, you know, there's nothing if that's your thing, but I think there is a certain pressure to want to, in the most extreme example, it's something like, I don't know, Dave Rubin or the Pick Me Gay or Milo Yiannopoulos. You know, they're doing it for the money, but I think there is a perverse incentive in being accepted by the people that would hate the others, you know? Being the token gay, being the one that has cracked the code and is part of this social normalcy. You know, that's sort of one of the reasons I would hang out with the bros at law school. They had some sort of passing fascination with me because I was weird, and I was, you know, I'm queer, but I didn't have had certain queer trappings, but I was different from the queer people they had heard about. So, and I didn't immediately reject them or make them feel uncomfortable. But some days I wish I had. Some days I wish I had. Maybe I would have been a better person maybe I could have been a good person if I were less accommodating and more hostile. It's funny how that works sometimes. Sometimes if you're accommodating to the wrong people, you can actually be a bad person. So maybe that's a wrong-headed view. Maybe you should always be kind and good, or try and win people over, or you win more flies with honey or whatnot. But sometimes it is good to look someone in the eye in real life and tell them you're not a good person. I've never done that because I'm polite and glad-handing, and, you know, I do believe there is potential in everyone to be good, which is why I don't want to alienate them. But honestly, looking back, there's just some people who can't be helped. That's wrong. I shouldn't say that. I mean, there are some people who I'm like, man, how do you exist? You are just, you know, here to blight people. I feel really bad for people like that. But in terms of how to be good, in terms of this Gaza stuff, I really do feel like I should be doing more. And I ask, what is required of you as a human to be good? And the answer, it took till this long in the episode to give it. I should have given it up front, maybe, to not tease tension. But is more. More is always required of you in order to be good. And that is something you just have to take on if you have any hope of being a real adult, I think. Or being a person that is actually functional in this world. And not just, I don't know, someone who is not felt. You know, whether that you don't have to be famous to be felt, but you have to do some stuff with other people. Your presence has to be, you know, maybe not. Maybe you can just be a ghost and float through life and be on your own, be a monk, and that's perfectly happy. But even in the discipline of a monk, there is a sense of being felt. You're isolating yourself so you can be felt by the cosmos or dissolve into them. Maybe that's the absence of feeling. Maybe that's why you isolate yourself. But we're not all monks. You know, we're social, unless you're planning to be a freaking monk. and you're planning to intentionally dissolve yourself into the universe to escape samsara or whatever, which you're probably not doing if you're a NEET, you gotta do something with people. You have to create reverberations of good tidings, which I don't do because I'm afraid of crowds and other people, and I have trouble forming relationships, which I've slowly starting to unlearn, but I see them as transactional. But I think that's what you have to do to be really good, is you have to care about other people. You really, not just more, but more, you have to really actually care about other people, which is hard. Because for, stuff I mentioned before, people suck. They can mislead you. Stuff now could go down the road. They could all end up biting you in the ass. But you just always have to take that leap of faith, especially when you are presented with overwhelming evidence, as I believe that people inured to leftist thought presented me with, just in terms of the bodies on capitalism, or what capitalism truly does to this world, or what it's ultimately responsible for. Stuff like slavery or the prison system, these current problems that we face that still aren't going away. And I just, even modern day, I speak of slavery because, not wage slavery, not even in an abstract sense, but we all know about the 13th Amendment. We all know what America does, and that's part of the system. It's all part of the system. So the fact that stuff still goes on, and it is, it is even slavery, because, we don't think of wage slavery in, like, America, maybe not, but I mean, that can, you could actually describe it in some good, but around the world, in the global south, where, kids blow off their hands with blasting caps, digging for cobalt. And so it's like, there is still, that's not any sort of dignified labor. That's not the sort of thing we imagine, but we sort of profit off that suffering all the time. And we know about that. We always subsist with this low-level knowledge that we are benefiting off of something terrifying, but we never get to see it. Even when you, order an Amazon package, which I do very frequently because I'm lazy, don't want to get stuff myself, and I see a little thing on there, a little household amenity, and I go, ooh, I don't care about the labor that's needed to bring this to my door, because I can just have it, and I can never see the person that does it. I mean, that's what's key, is if you never see the person that's doing it. That's why I think, beyond the COVID stuff, contactless delivery, certain people like it, because you never have to imagine someone is doing the labor. It just all comes to you magically. And living in a capitalist system has a way of making you feel that constantly, making you feel like it's all just magic. There is no, I mean, it's I was reading, I was just browsing on Twitter. There was an old comic, an old Calvin and Hobbes comic, where the dad is lying to Calvin. He says the ATM machine works. There's a little man in it that does a little printing and then gives the money. And you think of the world of automation and how it's replaced a lot of stuff, but at the heart of those little men are just, the products that come to us every day, just is something as simple as chocolate is attached to this unimaginable suffering. All of these people in these little ATM hovels just, doing this incredibly intricate task for nothing but the appeasement of us here. Honestly, I don't think you can be really good if you live in North America. If you're middle class in North America, that's it. You've probably you're probably eternally morally bad. That's not true. I'm kidding. But I think that is really the key. Is you first have to summon some sort of awareness, which is hard because I think you live in a society which tells you that awareness is bad or that questioning the status quo is for assholes. There's actually, we have our experts. We have the Will Stansels of the I should harp on Will Stansel, the most dunked on man on Twitter. But we have the Will Stansels on the world to tell you why the status quo is good. Actually, they have a bunch of numbers and credentials, and they've mastered a form of rhetoric that allows them to sound reasonable while advocating for something that is sort of out of touch, a little beyond reality, in my view. So, I was thinking how to be good about Gaza, and I started off doing charity and using my account to promote it, which I was, but later you find out, even like a UNRWA, which I was promoting, I find out later the UN's been like sending out expired rations to the Palestinians, and they've been like storing food where there's all sorts of difficulties with the UN. And then I see posts from activists which are now like, as much as the charity helps, as much as the money is like can do something, what you need to do is actually be organizing seriously and putting pressure on political parties and talking to Congress people, talking to your local representatives. If you're in a country that supports Israel, talking to your federal representative, calling, emailing, not just going to protest, but going to protests that actually fuck people's day up in a way that disrupts some sort of activity, some sort of daily activity, in a way that not just makes people aware, but gets them to want their government to do something just because of the inconvenience of having to deal with you, which is a fairly, I don't know if it's an effective form of protest. I don't know shit about protests or not, but yeah, I think these more practical things, these things which are, I mean, you should still, I'm sure there is still room to give money to various causes, and I'm sure that's still needed to some degree, but I believe these people are correct when they're telling me, you got to go out there, you got to get over your fucking fear of crowds, your fear of others, your fear of chanting, your fear of even being hassled by the goddamn fucking cops. You got to get over that shit and just show up somewhere. Because you can't do this from your fucking room. That's one thing you should know, is whatever this is, you can't do it from your fucking room. And I think that's what I have to do, because so far I've just been trying to do this shit from my fucking room. And it's not just protest, just like going out and connecting with people, or being part of some social group or organization, or even, being less introverted so I can talk to more people, so I can find people who, maybe are on the fence or who don't know enough about this issue, and then talk to them seriously about it. Maybe, leaving my bubble of comfort. And it's difficult to leave that bubble of comfort because it's very comfortable, frankly. They've done a great job at giving you enough if you are of some sort of middle class extraction, or even if even if you're like working a sort of crappy job, there are still forms of entertainment that will keep you occupied for a long enough time, and that will activate your pleasure nodes such that you won't want to actually do the work of going out there and making other people's lives better. And I know this because that describes me. I have, I would rather, frankly, be at home playing a stupid video game than having to go out and do anything. I tack towards laziness. I tack towards selfishness. I think a lot of other people do. I don't know the percentages on it, but you might be like me, and your life is an eternal struggle of trying to get over this sort of weird belief that people are wasting your time, or that just simply being around others is a waste of time because there's something you'd much rather be doing by yourself, especially if you're like me and you draw a lot. You have a vocation that naturally makes you insular. I think you can have a hard time doing the necessary work of trying to be good, which involves you getting out of your room, being less insular, being less introverted, always. Because you can't make an impact in the world. You can't have vibrations in the world unless you're with other people in a location that is not within your zone of comfort. Yeah, and I've been thinking about that a lot. I've been trying to do. I haven't really trying to. I talk about this and try to raise awareness in some nebulous capacity, but I really don't think I've been doing as much as I could have been doing, and I can chalk that, and I think that describes a lot of us as well. People who are listening, people who care about this issue, who are activated on it. You know there's more you could be doing, but you don't do it because you got your own stuff to worry about. And so something weird happened to me with this Gaza. It's been a month now. And at first it was debilitating. I was just constantly doom scrolling. And I'm sure everyone was at that time. And I'm sure people still are, because it's still a fucking nightmarish situation that our countries have a hand in, and that we are, as tax-paying citizens, even if you don't pay income tax, you pay sales tax, some portion of your money is always going to this country, and that gets used to murder people. And this is true of Canada. We have vocal support for Israel. We also send aid to Israel. We send arms to Israel. So we have blood on our hands as well. America has a lot more proportionally. But I think I know I could be doing more, but I've just first I was debilitated by just the shock of it. Shock, Naomi Klein shock doctrine style. There was this, I can't believe what is happening. Not just from the Hamas incursion, which seemed inevitable, frankly. I think you can only, whether you approve of it or not, or whether you think it was unjustified or justified, I think you can sort of agree that if you keep people in a cage long enough and you do terrible things to them for 70 years, what do you think is going to happen? What did you think was... You think people take it lying down? So this historical event happens in the most bizarre way possible, with the paragliders at the EDM festival yielding this horrific violence. Made all the more bizarre by the situation that it was in. And then the corollary response by Israel, and we all know that whatever Israeli casualty is incurred, they return it 10, 20-fold. That's always been their policy. So seeing that in action, and having the USA just give a total green light to it, and having international law fail, just lots of resignations at the UN or at various human rights organizations, where people feel that the inability to get a ceasefire in a more timely manner is just this huge indictment of our scheme of international law, which it is. Absolutely. So, so you have this amazing sense of shock, at least for the first couple of days of it. You can't really believe what is happening. And, of course, the casualties hadn't mounted yet, and you're arguing on the internet about all of these lies that Israel, these Hasbara lies that Israel pumps out there, and you're sort of flustered as to what to do. But then something strange started happening. You know, I stopped reveling in the chaos. And this is going to sound fucked up, because I don't want to suggest that there's any lesson to be learned here, or that there's any sort of self-improvement thing to be gained from it. But in sort of a general sense, I started, because I just was thinking about these people all the time. I was thinking about the plight of these people. I was thinking about myself less. So if anyone who's been listening to this, or me doing these sort of monologue-y, self-therapizing, maybe mildly annoying episodes, I sort of struggle with intense anxiety and morning nausea and this amazing sense that something bad will happen to me, which I've been having incredible trouble just keeping down all of my adult life. And I take Tums constantly, and I'm physically a wreck for most of the day until I calm down. And it's been really, I've been looking for stuff to snap me out of it. And strangely enough, just watching people actually suffer, not suffer like I suffer compared to these people. My life is so fucking easy compared to these people. Oh my God. Which is, I think, something clicked in me, and I stopped feeling nauseous or anxious, fearing what's the worst that could happen, or fearing the work and the daily maintenance of life, or the pointlessness of it, because I realized it was just a gift to live. And the fact that Israel takes that gift away from people in the most visceral and brutal sense is disgusting to me. But because of thinking about these others, I'm kind of getting my shit together. I'm organizing, but I'm cleaning my apartment, which I haven't done in literal years. I'm, being more conscientious. I'm getting work done on time. I'm writing stuff down. I have more focus, because it suddenly seems like I need to get my shit together so that I can more effectively help other people. And because my life is not so difficult, at least not compared to people that face actual enormous difficulties in a way that I can't help but bear witness to, that I constantly bear witness to, because I am at least partially complicit in these people's enormous difficulties. I stopped caring about myself as much. I stopped caring about my personal anxiety or what could happen to me as much. And I didn't feel sick anymore in the mornings. I've been able to do more things and think more clearly. And it was entirely precipitated by just caring about other people intensely and wanting to do the right thing in a way that I hadn't really done for a while, hadn't really practiced for a while. there's some advice that sometimes you get, which is like, you need to get your shit together first before you can love anyone else or before you can be appreciated in a community. But and I think I've been guilty of maybe propagating this advice, or maybe focusing too much on individualism. But yeah, the one of the a weird effective way to stop feeling so bad about what could happen is just really confronting about, no, the worst thing can't happen. You're partially complicit in doing the worst thing to other people. So, you need to do something. Stop thinking about yourself so much. And it worked, at least temporarily. So I'm trying to be more conscientious. I'm trying to get stuff organized within my own personal life so that I can go out there and meet more people and invite people over to my place to organize and to talk and to be more social, so that I can have more reverberations out in the real world, where it matters more. Yeah. I guess that's the thing that I know, is what is required of you. You gotta leave your fucking room. It's not just more. What is required of you? More. Always more. And it is good that is more. It is good that your responsibility to society, until you become elderly and totally infirm or whatever. But as long as you still have fight within you, or as long as you still have the ability to do so, you should turn your concern and attention towards the well-being of others. And I'm not saying that I haven't done shit. As I've said before, I haven't done, I'm just thinking about these people. But I don't know, for some reason it clicked this time. It hadn't clicked before, not with like the Azeris and the Armenians. That happened before this, or Tigray, or any of those. I guess because we're because we're funding this, that's why your attention is turned more towards it. Or even with Russia and Ukraine, which is a terrible situation, and people, dying, and I of course, I am grateful that I am not getting fucking bombed right now, but I don't know, I guess it was just the breadth and the gravity of what is occurring too, because it's not just bombing, it's the worst, most excessive, most cruel, nightmarish bombing campaign we've seen in the 21st century in such a concentrated, short period of time. In a month, they've dropped an incredible payload of thousands of children killed, way more than any other modern conflict in such a short period of time. And so I can't be anxious. I can't be thinking of myself. I can't be physically, tricking myself constantly into being physically debilitated, because then I can't be good. I hope. Maybe this feeling will pass and I'll lapse back into it again, but I'm going to try and ride this out. And, I really don't want it to make it sound like, oh, just thinking about the suffering of those poor people, that helped me out and I'm doing great, because I think that's what you can take from this. And I really don't mean it that way, but I'm describing to me what actually happened. Like this weird thought process in my brain, this like weird gate of like thinking about, oh, I'm gonna get hit by a fucking car today. I'm gonna get, destroyed. Everything. The tax people are coming to me. These loops of just these random destructive, catastrophizing thoughts that just plagued me constantly and caused endless anxiety. I don't know. They're slipping away because of this, because of concentrating on this. And that's... I want to do it more. Caring about other people, it turns out, or thinking about turning your attention towards the issues of those less fortunate than you, turns out every religion is correct. It turns out, all of those things that people said that you maybe took for granted or didn't take to heart as a kid, that you really have to, you want to make your own life better, really give a shit about other people. Fuck yourself, give a shit about others. And try and see with clarity who to care about as well. And try and find the smart people who will tell you who to care about as well. And that's what I've been doing, and it's been leading me in a direction. I don't think I'm good yet, but I think I sort of had the roadmap to get there, which is a lot more than other people have. And I'm thankful for the people that were able to get me there just through happenstance. People in my life who were concerned with the well-being of my soul and willing to argue with me and challenge my preconceived notions such that I might learn more. So yeah, get out and organize, get out with other people, leave your room. You couldn't go to protest. I don't know what value there is. I'm sure it's some. I'm sure just meeting other people and organizing is what's good. But whatever you do, beyond the donations as well, get out of your fucking room. That is what is required of you.